Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh, esteemed brothers and sisters. This is Barrister Zuleha Yusuf, your marriage counselor, life coach, pre- and post-divorce counselor, NLP practitioner, on the video series titled The Realities of Divorce, where we look at the pre- and post-divorce issues, challenges, and solutions with a view to enlightening you on the entire procedure of divorce in Islam, the misconceptions, the realities, the challenges, and all the things you may not have envisaged about the entire divorce process. In the last video, I mentioned that this happens to be a very sensitive and unpleasant topic, which is the reason why a lot of people do not like to discuss it. It is the proverbial elephant in the room. But it is compulsory that we discuss it because of the things we see, because of the skyrocketing rate of divorces, and because of the negative and bitter way people go about the entire process, which leaves both couples disenchanted with life generally, and which leaves their children victims of a broken home in ways that affect their future. So it is something that we need to discuss. If there's a way to do it amicably, if there's a way to prevent it, if there was a way to gain more knowledge about the entire topic of divorce with a view to helping our marriages. So that is the premise of the book, The Realities of Divorce, which I'm serializing in this new video series. So in the last one, we're talking about what are those misconceptions people have about divorce, and we're debunking them with the correct Islamic position. We mentioned that people feel that Islam does not allow divorce, but this is not true, because even though it is highly disliked, in fact, the most disliked thing among all the things that Allah made permissible, but it is allowed in Islam, because for some people, getting a divorce is a matter of life or death. Again, we mentioned the fact that some people think that only men are allowed to divorce in Islam, while the power to pronounce divorce, that's the power of talaq, has been vested in the man by the Sharia. However, a woman has recourse to divorce and can initiate divorce proceeding in the form of khul or fas. Number 3 is that your former spouse is not financially responsible for the children. That if you as a woman should ask for a divorce and have custody of the children, that your ex-spouse has no financial obligations toward the children again. And I say this is wrong, because the Quran provides that men will continue to be responsible for their children even if the mother is no longer with them, which is why couples should really seriously think about it. For men who utter divorce or who pronounce divorce arbitrarily and without holding back, without much contemplation, without looking at it very well before doing so, they need to think, because it's a negative for them. It has negative consequences for them. You no longer have access to this woman, but you still have to continue to feed her and the children after divorce. So it is something to really think about. Again, that as a woman, some people think that immediately you get divorced, you lose custody of the children no matter how small they are. Now, this is in the traditional African setting, because in African culture, or for the most part of African culture, children are said to belong to the man. Therefore, when there is a divorce or separation, the man or his family naturally take the children. But that is not the position in Islam. In Islam, children are divided into 3 categories: toddlers, which are minors of very little age, and then you have children at the age of distinction, and then you have children that are adults. For children that are adults, those can decide where they want to go to their father or their mother. For minor children, it will always go to the mother. It will always go to the mother, because they are very small, especially children that are breastfeeding, children that cannot take care of themselves. They need their mother's help and attention at that age. It will go to the mother. But for children at the age of distinction, there are authentic hadiths which show that sometimes the qadi, or the adjudicating power in the court, would ask the child to be brought to court and then decide to see the level of discernment of that child. If the child is at an age where he can actually decide where is best for him, he may be asked to decide, do you want to go with your mother or father? So that's the truth of the thing. It doesn't mean that immediately there's a divorce, the woman loses custody and she's never allowed to see her children again. This is a misconception. It's one of the myths that we are trying to debunk. Another one is that you should never speak to your ex-spouse. It brings bad luck. In some cultures, I've been told, there is a saying people say that you cannot take me to court and we now come back and be friends. That is not possible. Once we have divorced each other legally, then we must be enemies for life, and our families must be enemies for life. It does not have to be so. It is not true that you must remain enemies with your ex-spouse, or that you cannot even discuss. How about the children involved? For life, you are connected in some way. There's that bond of that children. And so necessarily you will have to come to the table to discuss about their welfare, about their education and health needs, about so many things concerning these children. And so if you want to remain enemies forever, how are you going to come to an agreement as to what is best for your children? So this is a myth. It is a wrong cultural belief, and there is nothing like that. The fact that you both took each other to court does not mean that you cannot settle amicably. And in the last episode, I gave examples of the people of the time of the Prophet, the companions and the Sahabas, who would divorce their husbands or wives and still come together to continue the jihad, to continue the struggle for the advancement of Islam. This takes a lot of emotional intelligence, a lot of maturity. That divorce can be amicable, and there can still be ways, to remain as co-parents or friends in the cause of Islam. Another misconception is that divorce must always lead to bitterness and hatred. It needs not lead to lifelong hatred. You need to heal from all the bitterness and resentment you feel towards your ex-spouse, whether it was your fault that the marriage ended, or it was the fault of the other party, or whatever water has passed under the bridge, or all the maltreatment that you may have maltreated each other, because there is no single victim in a divorce proceeding. It is always both parties contributed to the deterioration of the marriage. Yes, even if you think that you were a victim of everything bad that happened in the marriage, the truth is that you may also have been an enabler, man or woman. A man may enable his wife's bad behavior in some ways, or a woman may enable the other person's responsibility or irresponsibility, acts of omission or commission. So that you allowed some things also means that you contributed to the marital discord. Divorce does not need to lead to lifelong bitterness and hatred. Because whatever your ex-spouse do to you, if you do not forgive, you are only causing harm to yourself. They say hatred is a pill, is a bitter pill you swallow, and you are expecting, you take a poison and you are expecting the other person to die. You are the one with the poison in your heart, and so you are the one that needs to let it go and free yourself of all that. Another misconception is that your ex-husband must share all his properties with you. These we find in other climes, in other jurisdictions, not in Nigeria. We have seen sensational stories of celebrities where a footballer or somebody, a top shot athlete, would divorce his wife and be asked to give all of his properties to his ex-wife. It doesn't happen here. That's not the situation here. There is room for post-divorce settlement of women, which is still an ongoing battle. It's not fully recognized in a lot of Sharia courts, but it doesn't mean that the man has to part with maybe half or 3/4 of his property or all that. When you are divorced, apart from the children, he really does not have the duty to maintain you anymore or to take care of all of your needs the way he would to his legally married wife. You have become a non-mahram to each other. And so he does not have to give, except in cases, and this happens very often, where the couple acquired properties jointly together in the marital union. And this is why I must sound a note of caution. Married couples have the right to acquire properties individually in their various names. It's not compulsory to have joint accounts, because this is where the thing gets murky. This is where everything becomes complicated, where you acquired land, properties, whatever, in joint accounts, in joint names, and you realize at the end of the marriage that one person is going to lose out because maybe their name does not feature on the documents. This happens to women a lot. Their name does not feature on the documents, or whatever, the deed of title, whatever it is, shows ownership belongs to only one party. And you are saying, oh, but it's my money. I was the one that brought the money to buy the land. I was the one that set him up in business. Oh, that shop she has is my own. It has to be clearly stated. While Islam promotes love and togetherness, it does not promote foolishness or lack of discernment, because this is what it is. Islam has not forced anybody. And a lot of people are quick to cite the example of the Prophet ﷺ and is married to the noblest of women, which is Khadija radiallahu anha, that epitome of sacrifice that we are all asked to emulate as Muslim females. But the truth is, the Prophet never laid claim to any of her properties. While he managed her business for her, it was clear that this was for her. It was not something that he went and then put his name in her businesses. She was what you would call now a multi-billion whatever currency owner of businesses. She was that kind of person. She owned several companies. If you are to, the equivalent in present day society would be that she was the owner, CEO of many blue chip companies of her time. And she made the Prophet ﷺ her manager even before he became her husband, but he never laid claim to it. So this is where I'm saying there has to be that distinction. Everybody is allowed to own their properties, you know, whatever it is. If you are buying a gift for your wife of a car, let it be clear that it belongs to her. If you don't intend it to be her own, let it be clear that it's something that I'm giving you to you, so that if the marriage ends in divorce, which we don't pray it does, things will be clear and there will be no dragging, the way we see people dragging in court. Most time people even leave the issue of the children, the issue of the marriage that has ended, and start to drag about the properties. And that's why in verse 282, Surah Al-Baqarah verse 282, the longest verse in the Quran, an entire page, Allah talks about having agreements, having witnesses to every transaction, making things as clear and as documented as possible. So Islam gives room for couples to own things individually. And after marriage, let there be clear demarcation. If you need to get a lawyer, an arbitrator, whatever it is, let there be clear. Because another thing is that both couples have descendants, people that are to inherit you, your inheritors. For a woman, for instance, your parents are entitled to inherit you in case you die. You have siblings that are entitled to inherit you. If you mix up your property with that of your husband, he's entitled to have other wives, he's entitled to have other children. You will not be able to stop his people, for instance, from laying claim to everything. Even if you claim this house belongs to me, the car belongs to me, the business belongs to me, this and that belongs to me, you will not be able to stop them from doing so, and you'll be crying after the milk has been spilled already. So this is where I sound a note of caution as a pre and post divorce counselor, that it is better for couples in a marital union, no matter how loving you are towards each other. We do not envisage that any of you would end up with divorce, but one of you necessarily will die before the other. But to avoid all the confusion that comes thereafter, to please delineate who owns what in terms of properties. So if it happens that during the course of the marriage, the couple had acquired assets and landed properties, etc. together, it is necessary to delineate, to specify who owns what. And documentation is key, like I said before. And so, in the next episode, we are going to be talking about the realities of divorce, as well as the divorce procedures in the various courts. This is hoping that you have taken one or two lessons from this particular episode, and I'm looking forward to seeing you in all the next episodes, where we give expositions on the entire divorce procedure in the various courts, so that you know or have a feeler of what is to be expected if ever you decide to take this decision, or you know somebody that is actually in a confused state now, thinking about what next step to take because of marital challenges. Of course, like I always say, it should be the last, if it's possible, the lastest resort that we resort to in the face of marital challenges. This is hoping that Allah keeps our marriages safe, protect us from the machinations of shaitan, because sometimes marital troubles are caused by shaitan, that Allah increases the love and mercy between couples, that Allah keeps our homes as safe havens for both of us, where we find tranquility, sakina, where we find qalbun salim, peaceful and tranquil hearts, and where we are able to bring up forth the next generation, our children, to be wholesome individuals that are not broken by broken homes, that do not end up as victims of a bad marriage. We pray that Allah continues to guide and protect each and every one of us